to you.
Thanks, Doug. Good morning, everybody. Just a reminder, as Doug pointed out, this fund is an SA equity fund, so it doesn't invest in any offshore listed equities. It's only equities on the JSE. And so it's a good building block in a diversified portfolio. And it aims to be fully invested, so 95% exposure minimum, which means cash at maximum 5%. So if we look at the fund performance in the last few months and over the longer term as well, this year we've had a reasonable alpha for the last quarter and year to date as well, over the last year as well. And then more importantly, over the longer term, if you look at the 5-year and since inception, which goes back to 2014 when we started the fund with this track record. A risk stat that we like to look at is on the bottom right. If you look at the rolling 3-year performance of the fund relative to the peer group and the benchmark, and you can see that, relative to the benchmark on a rolling 3-year basis, 2/3 of the time, more or less, we've outperformed the benchmark on a rolling 3-year basis. So if I look at where that performance has come from year to date, if you look at the attribution on the left, the far left, the positive contributors to performance, MTN, that's been a good performer for us. And MTN was a bit unloved for a while. We've had MTN in our funds for a while, and last year during the sell-off, we had picked up that there was a lot of selling pressure on MTN, and it got incredibly cheap during the depths of the crisis. MTN was trading at about 30 Rand. It was cum div about 3 Rand, so there was a 10% yield embedded in the stock. And at that point, on a very conservative valuation, we thought that it was worth at least 90 Rand. So we increased our stake at that point. And obviously, as the share price recovered, it's contributed very nicely to performance. Sasol, another good performer for us. Look, unfortunately, we had Sasol going into the crisis last year, and it took a lot of pain. When we stress test as things normalized and the oil price normalized again, we looked at it and at 60 Rand of earnings and 60 Rand of oil and a 15 Rand exchange rate, that gave you about 35 Rand of earnings. And we thought that Sasol was worth at least 300 Rand. So at the beginning of this year, early into the year, we increased our position in Sasol. It's paid off quite nicely. We're still assessing the situation because, of course, the current energy shortage and energy crisis that you're seeing, this may persist for a bit longer. So we're currently assessing that, but Sasol's delivered quite nicely. And then just exposure to some diversified resources. We felt that, especially Anglo-American, we liked the basket, the exposure to PGMs, copper as well, and we've held that in the portfolio. And then we had quite a bit of exposure to financials, and mainly on the insurance side. We felt that the insurers offered a lot of value, so we had exposure to Liberty and Momentum. So it was very nice when Standard Bank came along and made the offer for Liberty. We had quite a bit of exposure to Liberty, and we got quite a bit of an uplift when the offer came through. And then some bank exposure as well, Absa, FirstRand. And then we didn't have a lot of exposure to retailers. We did have Woolworths in the portfolio, which we saw as somewhat of a self-help story. You've had a new CEO coming in, looking at the business with a clean slate. We liked what he was doing to streamline the business, reduce costs. And, for a long time, I think the market was so, had given up on David Jones, and they put zero value on that, the Australian operations. We felt that there was value there. And we held Woolworths in our portfolio, and that's come through quite nicely for us. And then Aspen as well. We felt that we took a position in Aspen. We felt that there was a lot of excess manufacturing capacity that they'd invested in the last few years. And as the COVID crisis came in, it's a very good asset to have when you've got sterile manufacturing capacity and a good name in the market that, you partner with the likes of Johnson & Johnson to do manufacturing. It's a good asset to have. So Aspen's come through quite nicely for us. And then in terms of detractors, we've held some gold in the portfolio as an inflation hedge and to diversify the portfolio. That in the last while hasn't delivered that well, and it's detracted from performance. If we look at the performance relative to the benchmark, a very similar picture. The only thing that stands out here, the big one, would be Naspers and Prosus. And if you look at that, it says that we've been overweight Naspers, despite Naspers and Prosus coming down with Tencent coming down and the Chinese tech regulation impact, the reason for that is at the beginning of the year, we sold down on Prosus when we felt that tech overall was quite expensive at the beginning of the year, and we reduced our exposure to Prosus. And then, importantly, when the transaction took place recently, we saw quite a bit of trading opportunities and special situation opportunities around that, with the index rebalancing, as well as the discounts between Naspers and Prosus, which we saw as an opportunity, and that added quite a bit of alpha around that period. And then the other one that stands out on here, which I hadn't mentioned before, was Netcare. We had quite a bit of exposure to healthcare stocks, which we think is very attractive, and that came through in the period as well. So if I look at how the fund's positioned, you've got the global consumer stocks that we've got exposure to, British American Tobacco. It's been languishing due to the wave of ESG flows away from these kinds of stocks. But that being said, it's currently trading on a 7.5 PE, 8.8 dividend yield in a low yield world, and it will continue to grow. We also think that, as they de-gear the balance sheet, they'll probably start share buybacks, which I think there's a strong possibility of that happening, and we think that gives you a very strong underpin. We've obviously got a lot of exposure to Naspers and Prosus. We still like the story. We think that, the Chinese tech regulation, it obviously has impacted in the more recent few months. We think that we possibly passed the peak of the noise of Chinese tech regulation, and we think Tencent itself is a very good asset within China, and we think it's still got the underpin of strong earnings and cash generation. On the SA Financial side, we like the insurers over the banks, so we still continue to hold quite a bit of the insurers. And then on the resources side, we still like Anglo American. We also like the PGMs. We think that they've obviously come back with the chip shortage issue impacting global auto production. We think that's possibly past the worst now, and we think there's massive investment going into chips manufacturing, and we think that recovers in the next 6 to 12 months. And then another differentiator is healthcare stocks. We really like the healthcare stocks. We think that they're incredibly attractive relative to the histories, and we think that there's a good recovery story there. If I just touch on a little bit about that, I think that if you look at what will drive the earnings and the recovery, we think that, initially going into the crisis, we thought that with job losses, there'll probably be lots of insured patients falling off or people cutting medical aids. If you look at the bottom left chart, you'll see that it's actually remained incredibly stable. Yes, it hasn't been growing because we haven't been growing jobs, but it hasn't fallen either. And I think the last thing you'd want to do in the midst of a healthcare crisis is cut your medical insurance. And then vaccinations, we've had a slow start, but we have been catching up. Obviously, it looks like we'll miss our targets of 70% of the adult population being vaccinated, but at the moment we're about 20 million with at least one shot and 10 million fully vaccinated. And then I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. People who've stayed away from hospitals, we think that, if you needed a hip replacement, you still need to get that hip replacement. You may have delayed it. And then unfortunately, prevention is better than cure. So some people who've delayed treatment for too long, by the time you get into hospital, you might require more acute treatment. So we think and that goes to increasing the occupancies, and you're buying all of that at much lower valuations than history had for these stocks. Just a snapshot of the portfolio in the different sectors. If I just, the overview of, we all know that the economy's recovered quicker than we initially expected last year in the depths of the crisis. The chart on the right is a nice, high frequency data chart from Nedbank, and they track from the point of sale devices on a color scheme, and you can see that, whether it's green and dark green, those are at or above pre-COVID levels, and you can see many of the sectors. Of course, we know airlines and tourism is still languishing with lockdowns and restrictions, but other sectors such as telecoms and retail and healthcare, many of these sectors are actually above pre-COVID levels. So overall, if we just look at the outlook for our market, this is a chart that we put together of domestic SA stocks So we take out all the resources stocks and all the global stocks with offshore earnings, and we focus on stocks with predominantly SA earnings, and we look at the valuation through time, and you can see that it looks fairly neutral or fairly valued relative to its history, but the earnings base, has been sort of reset, costs have been cut. So if there's any upside here, we think that there's quite a lot of operating leverage that can still come through. And I think it's important to point out that if you look at SA in the context of global markets, which are very expensive, especially the US markets and the European markets, and even other emerging markets, South Africa looks very cheap still compared to all the other asset classes out there. So as a building block within a diversified global portfolio, we still think that SA equities are actually attractive.
Thanks, Junaid. Appreciate that. I think it's very easy to dismiss South Africa as a place to, I guess, put your money to invest. And when you do look at those valuation charts, I don't think you can ignore a position in South African equity. And certainly, you guys have touched on some of the interesting areas of the market that you see, being insurance, some of the financials and the like. And some of the, I guess, the broader diversified miners has been quite an attractive part of your portfolio. We've had a few questions coming in. You did touch on Sasol. Question says, Sasol has recovered nicely this year, and you do hold it in the fund. I think it's just a touch over 4%. But and I guess you mentioned there that it had been, there has been a strong recovery in oil prices, and I guess that's driven the momentum of the stock. But do you guys see this as being an oil momentum play, or is there a broader kind of value play that could play out over the longer term?
So that's a very good question, Doug. So when we looked at Sasol, we initially looked at it, and assessing it on normalized earnings of about $60 of oil and 15 Rand exchange rate. And that gave us about 35 Rand of earnings, which we thought, on a sort of a nearly on a 9 PE, that gives you about fair value of about 300 Rand. So we thought Sasol was worth at least 300 Rand. And in the lower 200s, we added to our exposure to Sasol. With this energy crisis that you're seeing at the moment, because Sasol has such high financial gearing, the cash flows that they're generating at these higher oil price levels, they'll very rapidly de-gear. So you get that shift from in your enterprise value to equity. So you get the earnings coming through in the balance sheet de-gearing. So it creates massive value. So we're currently watching the space and assessing how long this energy crisis could take. Some commentators think it could be over in a shorter period. We think it does linger around for a bit longer, and in that case, Sasol will de-gear quite quickly. So even at the current levels, it still looks quite attractive. And if you look at where, if the energy prices stay where they are, Sasol will earn 70 Rand, and it's on a 4 PE at the moment.
Okay, so you see there's been quite a strong dividend play in the future potentially.
As they de-gear.
They generate the cash flows, and hopefully that'll be a nice kicker in the fund.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. So Woolworths is another fund or another share that you touched on. You guys obviously had been underweight some of the, I guess, lower end retailers such as ShopRite and the like. And you had obviously positioned yourselves in Woolworths, but Roy Bagattini obviously started last year. I had this interesting chat with you over coffee the other day, and I thought it would be quite a nice thing to bring up. But how is he actually reshaping Woolworths, like retail offering in particular? And I guess the next question is, are we going to see some of that food business being separated from the overall Woolworths holding company?
Good questions, Doug. I think it's a common thing, thing in the market that people think that there's a lot of value to be had in the food business, and I think the food business is actually, it's a world-class premium food business, and it deserves a much higher rating on its own. That being said, it's incredibly difficult to pull the two businesses apart. If you look at the stores, there's common ground, because you walk into the food store at the back, and along the way you may pick up some clothes for your kids for school or etc. So I think the food business is a premium business, running, firing on all cylinders. Where what needs to be fixed up is David Jones on the one side, and then even the local clothing business, which is called Fashion, Beauty and Home, needs to be fixed up as well. There's room to cut costs. So I think an easy area to cut costs is on rentals, So they'll be reducing floor space, and especially in David Jones, which an interesting stat, despite having only 45 stores versus 200 plus in South Africa, the floor space in terms of square meters is actually the same. So it gives you a sense of how much floor space could be cut. And of course, Australian rentals are amongst the most expensive retail rentals in the world. So if you're cutting expensive floor space, you can obviously cut a lot of costs. And then in terms of streamlining the product ranges as well, they found that in the SA stores, for example, there were multiple sub-brands which consumers didn't even really know about. So if, for example, 5 white T-shirts and things like that, it's all streamlining that to streamline the offer and cut costs. And we think there's quite a lot of upside in getting back to, good margins again.
A stock we have talked about in the past quite extensively was Aspen. That was a position you guys took probably around the start of the year. We started building up your position in that. I think you guys were really encouraged by the fact that the likes of Johnson & Johnson had appointed them to manufacture their vaccine. That really did give a lot of credibility to the business. And there was, I guess, other factors, particularly the distribution capabilities in Europe, that made it a very attractive opportunity to you guys. You guys have sold out of that now. What was your reasoning for that?
So at the beginning of the year, it did look very attractive. It was trading at probably 140, 150 Rand at the time. Aspen had invested, the last couple of years into manufacturing capacity. They were only utilizing a third of that manufacturing capacity. So there were 2/3 of sterile manufacturing capacity available. The Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine takes up a little bit of that, and there's still some capacity available for more after that. So we looked at the value of what that spare capacity could mean for earnings, and we saw quite a bit of upside. And obviously, as they started producing, and the balance sheet's been de-geared as well. So we felt that there's a little bit of a re-rating that you could get on Aspen coming from the overstretched balance sheet that they had in the past. But at the same time, we felt that, we're cautious about in the next 2 years, you could see a glut of COVID vaccines because there are so many on the market. And locally as well, you're seeing that many other manufacturers are also trying to set up shop to produce for South Africa and Africa as well. So we're cautious about that there could be a lot, you might get good earnings for a year or two, but we're not sure how sustainable some of these earning streams may be. So for that reason, we felt that it got above fair value, and we decided to reduce our position and sell out.
Cool. Thanks, Sinead. That's been a great presentation. Thanks very much for your time.